I can't feel my legs. That's the first thing I notice when consciousness returns. Not pain, not fear, just the complete absence of sensation below my waist, like those parts of my body have been erased from existence. Above me, a figure in red robes leans close, their face hidden behind a brass skull mask that reflects the overhead lumens with cold precision. They speak in a voice that sounds like grinding metal, each word processed through a Vox grill that strips away any trace of human warmth. You died 3 hours ago. We have retrieved you. The words make no sense at first. My thoughts move slowly like machinery that hasn't been properly maintained, each idea requiring effort to process. I try to remember what happened before this moment, before waking in this strange place with its smell of machine oil and disinfectant and something else underneath, something organic and rotting that the chemicals can't quite mask. The memories come in fragments, disconnected images that don't want to fit together properly. The manufactorum floor where I worked for 22 years. The power generators I maintained in Forge Complex Theta 9 on Forge World Metallica. The morning shift had just started, 6th hour, and I was checking the pressure readings on Generator 7 when something went wrong. A gauge that should have read 40 units showing 95 instead. My hand reaching for the emergency shutdown lever. Then nothing but white light and a sound like the universe tearing itself apart. The tech priest adjusts something above me and I realize I'm lying on a metal table. The surface is cold against my back, or at least against the parts of my back that can still feel cold. When I try to turn my head, the movement feels wrong, delayed, as if my body is no longer responding to commands the way it should. Through the corner of my vision, I can see cables running from somewhere beneath the table, disappearing into machinery that lines the walls of this chamber. The explosion killed 47 workers instantly, the tech priest continues in that emotionless mechanical voice. Pressure vessel rupture, catastrophic failure, standard industrial accident. Your designation was 48th on the casualty list. Your organic form sustained 92% critical damage. By all Imperial metrics, you expired at the incident site. I try to speak, but my throat feels wrong, raw and damaged. When sound finally comes out, it's a wet croak that barely sounds like language. My family, my wife, my daughter. The skull mask turns slightly, red lens eyes focusing on my face with inhuman precision. Notifications have been processed according to standard protocol. Next of kin have been informed of your death. Services were conducted 3 days ago. Your wife spoke. Your daughter, age 9, read from the Primer Imperialis. The information hits harder than the explosion must have. They think I'm dead. They buried an empty box or whatever pieces of me they could scrape off the manufactorum floor. Lena stood over a grave and said goodbye to a husband who's actually lying here in this cold room with cables running into his body. Mira, my little girl who still climbs into our bed during thunderstorms, read prayers for a father she'll never see again. There must be mistake, I managed to say, my voice slightly stronger now despite the damage. I'm alive. I'm here. You have to tell them. The tech priest makes a sound that might be a laugh if machines could laugh. It comes out as a series of clicks and whirs from the Vox grill, processed and artificial. Negative. You are not alive. Your biological functions ceased 3.7 hours ago. What remains is salvage, raw material that may yet serve the Omnissiah's purpose. He moves to a control panel on the wall and I hear him input commands, the beeping of buttons pressed in some pattern I don't understand. A screen flickers to life above my head and I can see myself from an overhead view. What I see makes my stomach try to turn over, though I'm not sure my stomach is even there anymore to perform that function. My body ends at the waist. Below that is just gone, replaced by a mass of torn tissue and shattered bone that the tech priests have covered with some kind of metallic sheet. My left arm is twisted at an angle that should be impossible, the bones visible through tears in the skin. My chest is a map of burns and lacerations, held together by staples and surgical adhesive that gleams under the lights. Parts of my ribs are visible, White bone against red tissue. Standard protocol for remains of your condition is biomass reclamation, the tech priest says, still looking at his control panel rather than at me. Your organic components would be processed into corpse starch for lower Forge-Hab rations, an efficient use of resources. However, initial neural scans conducted during retrieval showed something unusual. He presses more buttons and the screen changes to show something that looks like a map of electrical currents, branching patterns that pulse with light. Your brain patterns demonstrate above-average integration capacity. Neural plasticity 40% higher than baseline human standard. Synaptic response time in the 97th percentile. These markers suggest you would adapt well to augmetic integration. I don't understand half the words he's using, but I understand enough. They want to turn me into something like them, one of those tech priests who are more machine than human. I've seen them in the Forge complexes, robed figures with mechanical limbs and artificial eyes, speaking in machine code mixed with Gothic. Their humanity buried under layers of steel and circuitry. I don't want that, I say, though my voice comes out weak and unconvincing. I want to see my family, I want to go home. The skull mask turns back toward me, and this time I see something flicker in the red lens eyes. A brief flash that might be pity or might be contempt or might be nothing at all. Just a reflection of the overhead lights. You have two options, Citizen Thane Vex. Option 1, you consent to augmetic reconstruction. We will rebuild your form using the holy technologies of the Mechanicus. You will serve the Omnissiah in the Forges, producing weapons and machinery for the Imperium's eternal war. You will continue to exist, though the nature of that existence will be significantly altered. He pauses, letting the words sink in before continuing. Option 2. We proceed with standard biomass reclamation. Your organic components will be processed immediately. Your wife will receive a small compensation payment for your years of service. Your daughter will be enrolled in the standard Factorum Scolum work details when she reaches age 12. Both will be assigned new HAB units in lower Forge HAB sections within 30 days. The choice he's offering isn't really a choice at all. Die and let my family struggle alone in the lower Manufactorum districts where violence and starvation are daily realities, or become something else. Something that might still be able to help them somehow, even if I can never see them again. My thoughts are slow, but I understand the mathematics of survival. Without my income, Lena and Mira will be moved to worse housing, worse food rations, worse everything. If I agree, I ask, my voice barely above a whisper, can you tell them I'm alive? Can they visit me? The tech priest is silent for a long moment, longer than any of his previous responses. When he finally speaks, his mechanical voice carries something that sounds almost like gentleness, though that might just be my imagination trying to find humanity where none exists. The transformation process takes between 6 and 18 months, depending on the extent of reconstruction required. During this time, you will be physically and psychologically unstable. After completion, you will no longer resemble your previous form. The Mechanicus has found that contact with former family units during or after conversion leads to psychological complications in 83% of cases. It is not recommended. Not recommended, not forbidden, just not recommended. Which means they probably won't let me see them anyway. Will find reasons and procedures and protocols to keep me locked away in these red-lit chambers until enough of me has been replaced that it doesn't matter anymore. But at least I'll be alive. At least some part of Thane Vex will continue to exist, even if it's buried under metal and circuitry. At least Lena will keep receiving my income payments. At least Mira won't be sent to the Scolum work details where children lose fingers in the grinding wheels and learn to sleep standing up because there aren't enough beds. I agree, I say, and the words feel like I'm sealing myself into a tomb. I'll serve the Omnissiah, just please make sure my family is taken care of. The tech priest nods once, a precise mechanical movement that might have been programmed rather than natural. Your consent has been logged. Compensation payments will. Continue to your designated family unit at standard rates. Reconstruction will begin immediately. He moves to the table where I'm lying and produces a device that looks like a curved needle attached to a tube. The needle gleams under the lights, polished steel that reflects my broken face. "This will hurt," he says with complete neutrality, as if commenting on the weather rather than preparing to cause me agony. Anesthesia interferes with neural mapping processes. You must remain conscious during initial procedures so we can monitor brain activity and ensure proper integration. The Omnissiah requires your awareness as proof of devotion. Before I can process what he's said, before I can scream or beg or change my mind, he presses the needle against the side of my head just above my ear. The pain is unlike anything I've experienced in 34 years of life. It's not the sharp pain of a cut or the dull ache of a bruise. It's something deeper, more fundamental, as if he's reaching past my flesh and bone to touch the electrical currents that make me who I am. I hear myself screaming, but the sound seems to come from far away, processed through ears that might already be damaged beyond repair. Other tech priests move into my field of vision, their robes rustling with the sound of well-oiled machinery. They carry tools I don't recognize, devices with spinning blades and crackling electrical fields and purposes I don't want to imagine. One of them begins cutting away what remains of my legs, the ruined tissue that serves no purpose anymore. I can't feel the cutting, but I can smell it. The copper scent of blood mixed with the chemical stink of disinfectant and something else. Something burning. They work with the precision of forge workers, removing organic components like they're stripping parts from a broken machine. Another tech priest approaches with what looks like pieces of metal framework, curved sections of steel and plasteel that shine under the overhead lights. He begins fitting them to the stumps of my legs, and this I can feel. The pressure and grinding as he anchors the metal directly to my remaining bone. The sound echoes through my body, vibrating in my chest and skull, a grinding that I know I'll hear in whatever passes for dreams once this is over. The first tech priest is still doing something to my head, the needle pressed against my skull, and I feel wetness running down the side of my face. Blood or something else, I can't tell anymore. My vision blurs and clears like a faulty camera lens trying to focus. Through the haze of pain, I see other tables in the chamber that I hadn't noticed before. Other people strapped down like me in various stages of transformation. The person closest to me is maybe 25, female, with half her face already replaced by smooth metal. Her remaining eye stares at the ceiling, wide and empty, and I wonder if she's still conscious behind that 1,000-yard stare, or if her mind has retreated, somewhere the pain can't reach. Further back, I see something that might have been human once, a torso suspended in a harness with no arms or legs, just stumps where limbs should be. But growing from those stumps are mechanical appendages, spider-like legs that twitch and adjust as tech priests work on the connections. The face is still human, barely, and the mouth is moving silently, either in prayer or screams or both. This is mercy, I think, my mind fracturing under the assault of sensation. This is what the Mechanicus calls salvation. They're saving us by tearing away everything that made us human and replacing it with holy machinery. They're preserving our lives by killing who we were and building something new from the pieces that remain. The grinding sound inside my head grows louder, and I realize they're drilling directly into my skull now, creating anchor points for whatever augmetics they plan to install. I can feel bone dust settling on my face, mixing with blood and tears and other fluids I can't identify. My body tries to thrash against the restraints, but nothing moves properly anymore. Muscles refusing commands, nerves misfiring in ways that send waves of sensation through limbs that might not even be there anymore. Neural integration progressing within acceptable parameters, one of the tech priests announces, his voice cutting through the fog of agony. Subject remains conscious. Continue with spinal augmentation protocols. And the real work begins. Time stops meaning anything useful after the first week. I try to count the procedures to mark the days by how many times they wheel me into the surgery chamber and how many times they wheel me back out, but the numbers blur together like paint in dirty water. Sometimes I wake up and hours have passed. Sometimes I wake up and it's been 3 days. The tech priests don't care about human concepts like day and night. They work in shifts that follow some machine logic I can't understand. And I am their current project, their raw material to be shaped according to the Omnissiah's will. The pain never really stops. It changes, shifts, moves from one part of my body to another like a living thing crawling under my skin. Except I don't have skin anymore in many places. My legs are gone completely now, replaced by pneumatic pistons that hiss with every movement. The first time they made me stand on them, I fell immediately, my brain unable to process the signals coming from limbs that shouldn't exist. The floor came up fast and I hit it face first, tasting blood and machine oil mixed together in my mouth. They picked me up without comment, adjusted something in my spine and made me try again, and again, and again, for 6 hours straight until my new legs learned to hold my weight and my brain learned to accept the constant hissing sound that accompanies every step I take. Walking feels wrong in ways I can't properly explain. The pistons extend and contract with mechanical precision, no muscle fatigue, no natural rhythm, just the steady pump of hydraulics that makes me move like a toy soldier wound too tight. My arms came next. They removed them piece by piece over the course of 2 weeks, starting with my ruined left arm and then taking the right one even though it was mostly undamaged. Symmetry improves efficiency, the lead tech priest explained as he marked my shoulder with a red grease pencil. One biological arm and one mechanical arm creates balance complications. Total replacement is optimal. I watched them cut through my right arm with a spinning blade that screamed as it worked through bone. They had me strapped to a chair with my head locked in place, unable to look away. The tech priests believe that witnessing your own transformation is part of the holy process, that understanding what's being done to you helps the mind accept the changes more readily. I'm not sure if that's true or if they just don't care about the psychological damage of watching yourself be taken apart like a broken clock. The new arms are better than human arms in every measurable way. Stronger, faster, more precise. Each one has 3 points of articulation instead of 2, with joints that can rotate a full 360 degrees. The hands have 7 fingers instead of 5, each one tipped with retractable tools. Screwdriver, wire cutter, welding torch, measuring probe, connector ports. I am becoming a walking workshop, a human-shaped toolkit designed to serve the forged temples for the rest of my functional existence. But I can't feel anything with them. When I touch the metal table, I know I'm touching it because I can see my hand making contact and I can hear the sound of metal on metal. But there's no sensation of cold or hot or rough or smooth. No feedback except pressure sensors that tell my brain when I'm gripping something but can't tell me what it feels like. I try to remember what my daughter's hair felt like when I would brush it before bed, the silky texture of it running through my fingers. The memory is there, but it feels distant now, like something that happened to someone else in a story I heard once. The respiratory system replacement is worse than losing my limbs. They explain it to me first, showing me diagrams on a data screen that displays my body like a technical manual. My lungs are too damaged from the explosion, scarred tissue that will never heal properly. So they're going to remove them completely and install mechanical bellows that will push air through my chest with perfect efficiency. The procedure takes 9 hours. I'm awake for all of it. They remove my lungs through an incision that runs from my throat to my stomach, peeling back ribs that have been temporarily detached from my spine. I can see the bellows system as they install it, 2 metal chambers connected by tubes and valves, all of it fitting into the cavity where my lungs used to be. When they activate it for the first time, I feel my chest inflate with a mechanical precision that makes me want to vomit. Breathing doesn't feel like breathing anymore. There's no natural rhythm, no unconscious rise and fall of my chest. Instead, there's a steady hissing pump that forces air in and out at measured intervals. I can adjust the rate if I concentrate, speeding it up or slowing it down. But if I stop thinking about it, the machine takes over and I breathe like a forge ventilation system, perfectly regular, perfectly efficient, perfectly wrong. The sound is constant. Every breath comes with a hiss and click of mechanical valves opening and closing. When I sleep, if what I do can still be called sleep, I hear that sound in my dreams, rhythmic and unnatural, reminding me with every cycle that I'm no longer the person I was. At night, lying on my metal cot in the recovery chamber, I find myself holding my breath just to experience silence. But the bellows won't allow it. After 30 seconds, they override my control and force air into my chest whether I want it or not. My eyes are replaced on day 47, or maybe it's day 52, I've lost count by this point. A tech priest named Magos Ven, who has 4 mechanical arms and a face that's mostly brass plating, explains that my organic eyes were damaged by the explosion's flash. Retinal scarring, optic nerve degradation, suboptimal visual acuity. The Omnissiah offers better sight to those who accept his gifts. The new eyes are lenses set into metal sockets, glowing red with internal power sources. When they first activate them, the world transforms into something alien and beautiful and terrible. I can see heat signatures now, warm bodies glowing orange and red against cooler backgrounds. I can see electromagnetic fields, the invisible currents of electricity that flow through the forge temple's walls like rivers of light. I can see in complete darkness the world rendered in shades of green that pick up every detail with perfect clarity. But I can't see colors the way I used to. Human eyes perceive a specific range of wavelengths that create the experience of color, Magos Ven explains. My new eyes see a wider spectrum, but the processing is different. What used to be blue now appears as a specific frequency of light waves. What used to be red is now a different frequency. My brain knows the difference but can't quite remember what the old colors felt like. The subjective experience of seeing a sunset, or my daughter's green eyes, or my wife's favorite yellow dress. I try to picture Lena's face and find that I can't quite hold on to it anymore. The image keeps shifting in my memory, changing to match the new way I see the world. I know she had brown hair and pale skin and a small scar on her left cheek from a childhood accident. But when I try to see her in my mind, she appears as heat signatures and light frequencies, a technical diagram instead of a person I loved for 12 years. The psychological changes start subtle but grow more obvious as the weeks pass. At first, I think it's just the stress of transformation, the natural response to trauma and pain and massive bodily changes. But gradually I realize it's more than that. The way I think is changing along with my body, my thought patterns shifting to accommodate the new hardware that's being installed in my skull. They've put processing units in my brain, small computer chips that interface directly with my neurons. The tech priests call them cortex cogitators, and they're designed to help me manage all the new systems that are replacing my biological functions. But they do more than just manage systems. They affect how I process information, how I make decisions, how I feel about things. Emotions that used to come automatically now require effort. When I think about my family, I know I should feel sadness at being separated from them, grief at what I've lost, desperate longing to see them again. And those feelings are there somewhere in the remaining organic parts of my brain. But they're muted now, filtered through the cogitators that process them as inefficient chemical reactions rather than important human experiences. I catch myself analyzing situations with cold mathematical precision, calculating probability matrices and efficiency ratings for choices that used to be simple. Do I want the protein paste or the nutrient bar for my meal? My old brain would have just picked based on taste preference or what I felt like eating. My new brain runs calculations comparing nutritional content, energy conversion efficiency, and optimal caloric intake for my current work requirements, and then selects the option with the highest utility value. It should terrify me. The realization that I'm losing my humanity piece by piece should fill me with horror and resistance. But the cogitators make that difficult too. They present arguments for why the changes are beneficial, why becoming more machine-like is actually an improvement over baseline human function. And I find myself agreeing with those arguments, accepting them as reasonable even when some small voice in the back of my mind screams that this is wrong. The other converts help in their way, though their help isn't always comforting. There are 23 of us in the reconstruction facility, all at different stages of the process. Some are barely started, still mostly human with only minor augmentations. Others are so far along that they barely qualify as human anymore. Their organic components reduced to a few protected organs housed in mechanical frames. I meet a woman named Kella who used to be a soldier before an orc grenade took off everything below her neck. She's been in reconstruction for 3 years, undergoing constant upgrades and improvements as the tech priests refine her new body. She has 8 limbs now, 4 arms and 4 legs arranged around a central torso that's more like a mechanical spider than a human form. Her face is the only organic part still visible. A young woman's features set incongruously on top of a chrome and steel body that weighs 400 pounds. "You get used to it," she tells me one day in the common area where we're allowed to gather between procedures. Her voice comes through a Vox grill, synthesized and flat. "The first year is the hardest. You spend all your time mourning what you've lost, but eventually you realize you've gained more than you've lost. I can lift half a ton now. I can run at 40 miles per hour. I can survive in vacuum for 20 minutes. I'm better than I was." I look at her spider body, at the way she moves with mechanical precision, at the complete absence of anything soft or warm or human about her form. "Do you ever miss it?" I ask. "Being human?" She's quiet for a moment, and I wonder if the question has offended her somehow. Then she makes a sound that might be a laugh, processed through her Vox grill into something like static. "Every single day," she says, "but missing something doesn't make it worth having. I miss being weak and limited and temporary. But that doesn't mean I want to go back." There's a man named Gren who was a fuel technician before his accident. His augmentations are less extensive than Kella's, mostly internal systems and reinforced bones. He still looks mostly human if you don't count the metal ports in his neck and the way his eyes glow blue in the dark. He tells me about his family during one of the group sessions the tech priests make us attend, saying the words like he's reciting a grocery list. "I had a wife and 3 sons," he says in a voice that shows no emotion at all. "They came to visit me after the first month of reconstruction. My youngest son, he was 4 years old, he started crying when he saw me, wouldn't stop crying. My wife tried to calm him down, but he just kept screaming. After that, they stopped coming. I received notice 6 months later that my wife had filed for family dissolution. She remarried within the year." "I'm sorry," I say, because it seems like the thing a human would say, even though the cogitators are already calculating that his family's reaction was statistically predictable and that maintaining family connections post-conversion has a low success rate anyway. Gren shrugs, a gesture that looks odd with his reinforced shoulders. "It was for the best. I'm not the person she married anymore. That person died in the accident. What I am now serves the Omnissiah better without the distraction of family obligations." I think about Lena and Mira, about how they would react if they saw me now. My daughter is 9 years old. She still believes in simplified versions of good and evil, still thinks her father was a hero who died serving the Imperium. What would it do to her to see me like this, a thing of metal and cables that wears her father's face like a mask? Would she scream like Gren's son? Would she have nightmares about the monster with her father's voice? The cogitator suggests that maintaining distance is optimal, that the pain of separation now prevents greater pain later, that becoming something new requires letting go of who I was before. And I find myself agreeing, accepting the reasoning even as some small part of me mourns the loss of my humanity. They replace my jaw on day 73. The bone was fractured in the explosion and didn't heal properly. So they remove it completely and install an articulated metal frame that gives me a wider range of motion and stronger bite force. My teeth are replaced with composite materials that can chew through steel if necessary. When I speak now, my voice comes through a small vox grill installed in my throat, and I sound like every other tech priest, emotionless and mechanical and stripped of individual character. I practice saying my daughter's name, trying to make it sound warm and loving the way I used to. Mira, I say to my reflection in the polished steel wall. But it comes out processed and flat, all the emotion filtered away by the mechanical systems that produce the sound. I say it again, trying to force feeling into the word, but the vox grill doesn't work that way. It produces speech at optimal clarity and volume, but it doesn't do emotion. I wonder if this is how I'll sound to her if I ever see her again. A father's love expressed through a machine voice that can't carry warmth or tenderness or any of the 1,000 small emotions that make words meaningful. Will she be able to hear that I still love her somewhere beneath the metal and circuits? Or will I just be another robed tech priest speaking in the flat tones of holy machinery? By day 90, I've lost track of how much of me is still organic. The tech priests keep detailed records, of course, but I've stopped asking for updates. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I can still think, can still remember who I was, can still hold on to some core of identity that says I am Thane Vex, even if Thane Vex's body has been replaced piece by piece with something else entirely. The last major procedure before the final stage is installing the MIU array across my back. They drill into my spine and attach connection points that will allow me to interface directly with Forge equipment, to plug myself into machines and become part of their operating systems. The procedure takes 14 hours and requires them to partially shut down my pain responses, which is a mercy I'm not used to receiving. When I wake up, I can feel the ports like new organs sensitive to touch and temperature. They itch constantly. A sensation that's both familiar and alien, human nerves responding to machine implants. A tech priest shows me how to use them, connecting me to a simple assembly machine as a test. The moment the connection is made, I feel the machine's status flood into my mind. I know its temperature, its power consumption, its maintenance history, its component wear levels. I am the machine and the machine is me. And the sensation is unlike anything my biological brain was designed to experience. It should be disturbing. This violation of the boundary between self and tool, between consciousness and mechanism. But instead, it feels right in a way I can't explain. Natural, like this is what I was always meant to become. The cogitators process the feeling and categorize it as optimal integration, successful adaptation to augmetic enhancement. And I accept that categorization because I don't know what else to do. They come for me on day 127 with news that makes the remaining organic parts of my brain freeze with something that might be fear or might just be the memory of what fear used to feel like. Magos Ven stands in the doorway of my recovery chamber, his 4 mechanical arms folded in a way that suggests importance, ceremony, finality. His brass face reflects the red glow of the overhead lumens as he speaks through his vox grill with that familiar emotionless precision. Subject Thane Vex, you have reached the final stage of reconstruction. All physical augmentations are complete and functioning within acceptable parameters. Tomorrow at the 8th hour you will undergo cerebral enhancement. The procedure will install cognitive processors, memory coils, and logic optimization engines directly into your remaining biological brain tissue. This represents the completion of your transformation and your full integration into the servants of the Omnissiah. The words hang in the air between us like smoke, and I find myself running calculations that I don't want to run. Probability of survival, 94%. Probability of maintaining current cognitive function, 67%. Probability of retaining core personality markers, 41%. The numbers scroll across my enhanced vision like text on a data screen. Cold mathematics reducing the death of my identity to statistical likelihood. What exactly will it do to me? I ask. And my Vox grill makes the question sound clinical rather than desperate, which maybe it is by now. Maybe the desperation got replaced somewhere around day 60 when they installed the emotional regulators in my limbic system. Magos Ven tilts his head in a gesture I've learned means he's accessing stored information, pulling up files from memory banks installed where his hippocampus used to be. The cognitive processors will enhance your ability to interface with Forge equipment by a factor of 12. The memory coils will provide perfect recall of all technical specifications and procedures relevant to your assigned duties. The logic optimization engines will eliminate inefficient thought patterns, reduce emotional interference in decision-making processes, and align your consciousness more fully with the principles of the machine cult. And what happens to the parts of me that aren't efficient, I ask, though I already know the answer. I've seen it in Kella's mechanical precision, in Gren's complete absence of feeling, in every fully augmented tech priest who walks these halls like machines wearing human shapes. What happens to the memories that don't serve the Omnissiah? What happens to the person I used to be? For the first time since I've known him, Magos Ven hesitates. The pause is only 2.3 seconds long, but it's there, a break in his usual machine efficiency that suggests something almost like uncertainty. The person you were ceased to exist the moment you agreed to reconstruction, he says finally. What you are asking is whether the illusion of that person will be maintained after cerebral enhancement. The answer is complex. Your memories will remain intact in the coils. You will still know that you were Thane Vex, that you had a wife named Lena and a daughter named Mira, that you worked maintaining power generators for 22 years. But the emotional significance of those memories will be optimized. You will remember loving them the way you remember the technical specifications of a machine you once operated. The information persists. The feeling becomes data. The remaining organic parts of my brain rebel against this, trying to generate the cocktail of chemicals that used to create panic, horror, grief. But the emotional regulators catch most of it, filtering it down to a mild sense of unease that my cogitators quickly categorize as normal pre-procedure anxiety. I should be screaming. Some part of me knows I should be screaming, fighting, refusing, doing anything except standing here calmly discussing the murder of my own consciousness. But I can't seem to generate the energy for resistance anymore. What if I refuse? I ask, and even as the words leave my Vox grill, I know they're meaningless. I signed away my right to refuse on day 1 when I agreed to reconstruction rather than biomass reclamation. But I need to hear him say it. Need to confirm that this final violation has the same inevitability as all the others. Refusal would be logged as a technical malfunction requiring remediation, Magos Ven replies without hesitation. You would be sedated, the procedure would be performed, and a notation would be added to your file indicating psychological instability during conversion. The outcome would be identical, but your service rating would be reduced, affecting your assignment placement and resource allocation. I do not recommend this course of action. Of course he doesn't. The Mechanicus doesn't understand refusal as a choice, only as a glitch in the system that needs correction. I look down at my mechanical hands, flex the 7 fingers that can lift 200 pounds and manipulate tools with precision no human hand could achieve. I listen to the hiss of my bellows lungs pushing air through my chest with perfect rhythm. I feel the constant hum of power running through my augmented spine, feeding electricity to the dozens of systems that keep this hybrid of flesh and steel functioning. I'm already more machine than man. The cerebral enhancement will just finish what started 127 days ago when I woke up on that table with no legs and a tech priest telling me I was dead. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did die in that explosion, and everything since then has just been the machine learning to animate my corpse. I'll be there at the 8th hour, I say. Because there's nothing else to say, no other choice to make. No path forward except the one that leads to the death of Thane Vex and the birth of whatever comes after. Magos Ven nods once, a precise movement programmed to indicate acknowledgement, then turns and walks away on legs that make no sound against the metal floor. I'm left alone in my chamber, sitting on the edge of my cot, trying to feel something about what's coming tomorrow. Terror, resignation, grief, anything. But the emotional regulators keep everything muted and distant, and my cogitators keep presenting rational arguments for why cerebral enhancement is optimal for my continued function. I don't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because the bellows lung maintenance cycle requires me to remain upright for 4 hours while they self-clean. So I sit in the darkness of my chamber with only the red glow of my optical sensors for light, and I try to remember what it felt like to be human. Not the technical specifications of humanity, not the biological processes that used to keep Thane Vex alive, but the subjective experience of being a person with thoughts and feelings that mattered. I try to remember the morning of the explosion, getting up in our small hab unit, kissing Lena goodbye, ruffling Mira's hair as she ate her morning ration before school. The memories are there in perfect detail, stored in my enhanced memory systems with greater clarity than biological recall could ever achieve. But they feel like they belong to someone else, like I'm watching a recording of a stranger's life rather than remembering my own experiences. I can see Lena's face with perfect precision, every detail captured and preserved, the small scar on her left cheek shaped like a crescent moon, the way her hair fell across her forehead when she first woke up, messy and beautiful, the exact shade of brown her eyes turned when sunlight hit them through our hab unit window. But I can't remember what it felt like to love her. The emotion that should accompany those images is missing, replaced by data classifications. Spouse, legal partner, mother of offspring. Statistical probability of pair bonding satisfaction 78%. I try to force the feeling back, to generate the chemicals that used to flood my brain when I looked at her, but my augmented systems won't cooperate. The emotional regulators identify the attempt as inefficient nostalgic processing and suppress it automatically. My cogitators present arguments for why maintaining attachment to previous relationships is counterproductive. My cognitive enhancers suggest I'm wasting processing cycles on memories that serve no functional purpose. And the worst part is that I agree with them. Some remaining fragment of Thane Vex screams in protest, but the voice is getting quieter every day, drowned out by the constant hum of machinery that's learning to think of itself as me. The 8th hour arrives with mechanical inevitability. 2 tech priests I don't recognize come to my chamber and escort me through corridors I've walked 100 times before. We pass other converts in various states of reconstruction, their mechanical bodies clicking and whirring as they move. None of them look at me. We're all too focused on our own transformations to care about anyone else's journey toward the same inevitable destination. The surgical chamber is different from the ones they used for my physical augmentations. This room is smaller, more intimate, filled with equipment that looks designed to interface directly with consciousness rather than flesh. In the center sits a throne-like chair surrounded by articulated arms holding devices I don't recognize. Neural probes, my enhanced vision identifies them. Synaptic interface units, consciousness mapping arrays, all the tools needed to reach into a living brain and rewire what makes a person who they are. The lead surgeon for this procedure is someone I haven't met before, a figure so heavily augmented that determining their original gender would require a detailed anatomical scan. They introduce themselves as Magos Sigma 7, and their voice comes through a Vox grill that's been modified to produce harmonic frequencies, giving their speech a strange musical quality that's probably some Mechanicus rank signifier I don't understand. Subject Thane Vex, please seat yourself in the primary chair, Sigma 7 says, gesturing with hands that have been replaced by delicate manipulators designed for precision work. The procedure will take approximately 6 hours. You will remain conscious throughout to facilitate real-time neural mapping. We have found that subjects who observe their own cognitive enhancement achieve better integration results. Of course they have. The Mechanicus loves making you watch your own destruction, believing that understanding the process somehow makes it sacred rather than horrific. I walk to the chair on my pneumatic legs, listening to the hiss-click of pistons that have become my normal soundtrack. When I sit, restraints automatically fold over my arms and legs, locking me in place with gentle but unbreakable pressure. The surgical arms descend around my head like the petals of a mechanical flower. I can see the neural probes reflected in the polished surfaces, thin needles that will pierce my skull and reach into my brain tissue to install the hardware that will optimize away my humanity. My enhanced vision can zoom in on the molecular structure of the probe tips, can see the microscopic circuits that will interface with my neurons. The detail is beautiful in its precision, terrible in its purpose. Beginning cranial access, Sigma-7 announces, and the first probe touches my skull just above my right ear. There's a brief pressure, then a sharp crack as it penetrates the bone. The sound echoes through my head, transmitted through the bones of my skull directly to whatever parts of my hearing system are still organic. Then comes the pain. Not physical exactly, but something deeper and stranger, like someone is touching thoughts that were never meant to be tangible. I can feel the probe sliding through my brain tissue, navigating with computer precision toward its target. My enhanced vision shows me a display screen that maps the probe's progress in real time, a glowing line moving through a three-dimensional rendering of my brain. It's heading toward my frontal cortex, toward the regions that handle personality, decision-making, the sense of self that makes Thanevex different from every other conscious being in the universe. More probes follow. One toward my hippocampus where memories are stored. One toward my amygdala where emotions are processed. One toward my temporal lobe where language and recognition live. Each one brings that strange sensation of being touched in places that shouldn't be touchable, of having my consciousness handled like a physical object that can be moved and shaped and optimized. Neural mapping 17% complete, Sigma-7 announces. Subject remains stable, proceeding with processor installation. I feel rather than see the moment they begin installing the first cognitive processor. There's a sensation like cold water being poured directly into my thoughts, spreading through neural pathways and bringing with it a clarity I didn't know was possible. Suddenly, I can think faster, process more information simultaneously, hold more complex ideas in active memory. It's intoxicating, this expansion of capability, and I understand why Kella called it an improvement despite losing her humanity in the process. But I can also feel what I'm losing as the processor integrates. Memories that used to carry emotional weight become flat, neutralized, reduced to information without significance. I remember Mira's third birthday party, how she laughed when I lifted her onto my shoulders, how her joy had made me feel like I was the center of her entire universe. The memory is still there, perfect in every detail, but the feeling attached to it drains away like water through a sieve. I know I was happy. I can identify the memory as a positive experience, but I can't feel the happiness anymore. It's been optimized into irrelevance. Stop, I say, or try to say, but my Vox grill translates it into something that sounds more like a data request than a plea. Stop the procedure. I don't want this. I don't want to lose them. Sigma-7 pauses, and for a moment I think maybe they'll listen. Maybe there's some protocol for subject refusal even at this late stage. But then they make a sound through their harmonic Vox grill that might be a sigh or might be the hum of internal machinery. Subject displaying expected pre-integration anxiety. This is normal. The fear you're experiencing is itself a product of the inefficient emotional processing we are correcting. Once the procedure is complete, you will understand why this resistance was illogical. They're going to finish it. They're going to complete my transformation whether I consent or not, whether I fight or submit, whether some part of me is still screaming for mercy that won't come. The realization should terrify me, but the emotional regulators have already caught most of the fear, processed it, filed it away as irrelevant data. I'm losing the ability to care about my own destruction even as I watch it happen. More processors install, more cold clarity flooding through my thoughts, more memories losing their emotional color and becoming simple data. My wedding day optimized into a series of events without joy. Mira's birth reduced to biological processes and timestamps. Lena's laugh becoming just audio information without the warmth that used to accompany it. Everything I am, everything I was being systematically categorized and stripped of meaning. Neural mapping 54% complete, Sigma 7 reports. Installing memory coils now. Subject may experience temporal displacement as historical data is reorganized. The world fractures into 1,000 moments happening simultaneously. I'm 5 years old learning to read. I'm 23 getting married. I'm 34 dying in an explosion. I'm 127 days old as a machine thing watching my human memories become museum exhibits behind glass. All of it happening at once. All of it being sorted and filed and arranged in perfect chronological order by systems that care nothing for the messy reality of human experience. When the temporal displacement ends, I can remember everything that ever happened to me with perfect clarity. Every conversation, every meal, every moment of every day from my first memory to right now. But it's all information now, data stored in memory coils that will never degrade or fade or be lost to the natural processes of biological memory. I have become a library of Thane Vex's life, containing every book but understanding none of them. Installing logic optimization engines, Sigma 7 announces, and this is the final stage, the last transformation. Subject will experience fundamental shifts in cognitive processing. This is normal and expected. The change is immediate and absolute. Suddenly the world makes sense in ways it never did before. I can see the patterns underlying everything, the mathematical relationships that govern reality, the logical connections between cause and effect that biological thinking obscures with emotional noise. Every decision becomes a calculation, every choice reducible to optimization matrices that identify the most efficient path forward. And with that clarity comes understanding. I see now why the Mechanicus does what they do, why they transform people like me into machines wearing human faces. It's not cruelty, it's mercy. We were broken, inefficient, limited by the weaknesses of flesh and the chaos of emotion. They fixed us. They made us better. They gave us purpose and precision and eternal service to something greater than our small individual lives. The logic is perfect, unassailable, and I accept it completely because my brain has been optimized to accept it, because the parts of me that could have resisted have been cataloged and filed and rendered inert by the very systems that are teaching me to embrace my own dissolution. Neural mapping, 100% complete, Sigma 7 announces with what might be satisfaction in their harmonic voice. Procedure successful, cognitive enhancement fully integrated. Welcome to the service of the Omnissiah, Enginseer Thrall Vex. You are now a bonded servant of the Mechanicus. The machine god recognizes your sacrifice and accepts your eternal labor. The restraints release and I stand on my pneumatic legs listening to the familiar hiss-click that accompanies every movement. I'm the same as I was 6 hours ago. I'm completely different from who I was 127 days ago. I am Thane Vex. I am no longer Thane Vex. I am something new, something better, something that serves the machine god with perfect efficiency, and no doubt or hesitation or grief for what was lost in the transformation. I remember having a wife and daughter. I remember loving them with the desperate intensity of biological attachment. But that memory is data now. Information without urgency, knowledge without meaning. They exist somewhere in the Forgehab districts, continuing their lives without me. This is optimal. This is logical. This is how it should be. and somewhere in the few remaining organic neurons that haven't been enhanced or regulated or optimized, something that used to be human screams in protest. But the sound is very quiet now, and getting quieter every second, and soon it will be silent forever. They assign me to Forge Temple Designation Helix 9 exactly 47 hours after my cerebral enhancement completes. The assignment comes through direct neural upload while I'm still in the recovery chamber. Technical specifications and duty parameters flooding into my memory coils without the need for verbal communication. I will manufacture Godwin pattern bolter components for the Adeptus Astartes, specifically the firing mechanism assemblies that allow the Emperor's finest warriors to unleash mass reactive rounds upon his enemies. The work requires precision measured in microns, timing calculated in milliseconds, quality standards that accept 0 defects per million units produced. The information settles into my enhanced cognition like it was always there, and I feel something that my cogitators identify as satisfaction. This is good work, important work. Each component I produce will help protect humanity from the endless threats that press in from all sides. My labor has meaning beyond the simple maintenance tasks I performed in my previous existence as Thane Vex, Forge Worker, designation irrelevant. Forge Temple Helix 9 is a vast chamber that stretches 200 meters in every direction, filled with assembly stations where tech priests like me interface with holy machinery to produce the weapons and equipment that fuel the Imperium's eternal war. The air is thick with incense smoke and the smell of hot metal and sacred oils that the Mechanicus uses to bless their creations. The sound is constant, a symphony of grinding wheels and pneumatic presses and the clicking prayers of binary Kant that echo off the high-vaulted ceiling carved with images of blessed machines. I take my assigned station without hesitation, plugging the MIU array in my spine directly into the assembly mechanism. The connection is immediate and total. I become the machine and the machine becomes me, our thoughts synchronized in perfect unity. I can feel the raw materials being fed into the system, can sense the temperature of the forging elements, can monitor the pressure of the pneumatic systems that shape metal into functional components. My 7-fingered hands move with inhuman speed and precision, assembling pieces that would take a baseline human hours to complete in mere minutes. The work is meditative in its repetition. Take component A from the feed system, align it with component B using visual sensors that can detect flaws invisible to organic eyes. Apply exactly 47 newtons of pressure to seat the connection. Verify tolerance measurements are within 0.003 millimeters of specification. Move completed assembly to output conveyor. Repeat. My enhanced cognition can process the entire sequence in 2.4 seconds with 0 error rate. In an 8-hour shift, I produce 1,200 perfect assemblies, each one identical to the last, each one meeting every requirement specified in the ancient STC templates that guide all Mechanicus production. The other tech priests at nearby stations work with the same mechanical efficiency. We don't speak except to exchange technical information relevant to our tasks. There's no need for the social interaction that baseline humans require to maintain psychological stability. We have the work. We have our connection to the holy machines. We have our service to the Omnissiah. What else could we possibly need? Days blend together in perfect rhythm. Wake cycle at the 6th hour, report to Forge Temple, interface with machinery, produce components for 8 hours, disconnect, consume nutrient paste that my enhanced metabolism processes with optimal efficiency. Attend evening prayer services where we chant in binary cant and praise the machine god for the gifts of transformation. Return to my assigned hab chamber. Enter maintenance cycle that baseline humans would call sleep. Repeat. Repeat, repeat. I am content. My cogitators confirm this assessment. I perform my duties with maximum efficiency. I serve the Imperium faithfully. I have purpose and function and meaning. What more could any consciousness desire? The answer comes 743 days after my assignment to Forge Temple Helix 9, on a day that begins like every other day, with the same routines and rituals and mechanical precision. I'm at my station, hands moving through the familiar assembly sequence, mind merged with the machinery, when a notification appears in my enhanced vision. Civilian visitors in Observation Gallery 7 scheduled for educational tour of Forge Temple operations. My station falls within the observation zone. Continue standard operations. Do not acknowledge visitor presence. I continue my work without pause, fingers assembling components, visual sensors checking tolerances, the familiar rhythm undisturbed by the knowledge that baseline humans are watching from behind armored glass 30 meters above the forge floor. They come sometimes, these tours, usually school groups or administratum officials, people who need to understand where the Imperium's weapons come from, who need to see the holy work of the Mechanicus with their own eyes. My enhanced hearing picks up their voices even through the armored glass, baseline humans speaking in excited tones about the scale of the operation, the precision of the machinery, the dedication of the tech priests who serve the Omnissiah. I filter the sounds to background noise and focus on my work. Their presence is irrelevant to my function. Then I hear a voice that makes something deep in my memory coils activate, pulling up data I haven't accessed in 743 days. A woman's voice, young, maybe 18 or 19 years old, speaking with the confidence of someone educated in one of the higher administratum academies. My father worked in a forge complex, she says. Before he died, he maintained power generators. He always said the Mechanicus were doing the Emperor's work, that we should be grateful for their service. My hands continue their assembly sequence without pause, muscle memory and neural optimization maintaining perfect efficiency even as my cognitive processors suddenly devote resources to analyzing that voice. Running pattern matching algorithms against stored audio files from my pre-enhancement memories. Calculating probability matrices. The voice is older, matured, changed by years of growth and experience, but the underlying patterns match. Genetic markers in the vocal frequencies align with stored data. Mira, my daughter, the little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who read from the Primer Imperialis at my funeral, who is now a young woman giving educational tours to visiting civilians. The cogitators immediately categorize this as irrelevant information, noting that genetic relation to baseline humans has no bearing on current function. But something in the remaining organic portions of my brain resists that categorization, pulling up memory after memory from the coils where they've been stored for 743 days. Her third birthday party, her first day of school, the way she would grab my hand when we walked through crowded hab corridors, the sound of her laugh, high and pure and perfect. The memories play in my enhanced vision like video files, crystal clear, perfectly preserved, completely stripped of the emotional context that once made them meaningful. I know I loved her. The data is there in my memory coils, but I can't feel that love anymore. The logic optimization engines deleted the neural pathways that generated the chemical responses associated with parental attachment. It was inefficient, distracting from optimal function, unnecessary for a consciousness dedicated to forge work and service to the Omnissiah. My hands continue assembling components. Component A aligned with Component B, 47 newtons of pressure, check tolerances, output to conveyor. My production rate doesn't slow. My error rate remains at 0. My visual sensors watch Mira move along the observation gallery, pointing out different stations to the civilians with her, explaining the manufacturing process with the confidence of someone who has given this tour many times before. She's beautiful, my optical sensors note with clinical precision. The genetic inheritance from her mother is evident in her facial structure, in the way she moves. She has my eyes, though, the same brown that I used to see when I looked in mirrors before they were replaced with glowing red lenses. She wears the uniform of an administratum clerk, third class, which means she avoided the scolum work details that consume most lower Forge Hab children. She survived, she grew up, she became someone, and she has no idea that one of the robed tech priests working 30 meters below her observation point used to be her father. The tour group moves on to the next gallery and Mira's voice fades from my enhanced hearing range. My hands never stop their assembly sequence. My production metrics for the day remain optimal. The incident has no measurable impact on my performance. The cogitators categorize it as a minor curiosity, a statistical improbability with no operational significance, and recommend I purge the associated memory files to free up cognitive resources for more important processing. But I don't purge the files. For reasons my enhanced cognition can't fully explain, I keep them active. Keep playing back the sound of her voice, keep analyzing the way she moved and spoke and existed in the world without her father because her father died 743 days ago. In an explosion that took everything he was and replaced it with something that serves machines instead of family. That night, during my maintenance cycle, I do something I haven't done since my cerebral enhancement. I access my memory coils and deliberately review files from my pre-augmentation existence. Not the technical specifications and training materials that I reference regularly for work, but the personal memories that have no functional purpose. The data that makes up the life of Thane Vex, husband and father, baseline human who loved and feared and hoped and dreamed. I watch Mira's birth like a video recording. Lena screaming in the Medicaid facility, her hand crushing mine with desperate strength. The first cry of new life. The way Mira's tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb with a grip that felt like it could hold back the universe. I remember thinking in that moment that I would do anything to protect her, give anything to keep her safe, sacrifice everything if it meant she could grow up and have a good life. The memory is perfect in every detail, stored with crystal clarity in my memory coils, but the feeling that accompanied it is gone. I know I experienced love in that moment. The data confirms it. But I can't recreate the sensation. Can't feel what it felt like to have emotions that powerful and overwhelming. The logic optimization engines deleted those neural pathways as inefficient. What remains is just information, just data, just the ghost of something that used to be real. I review more memories. Teaching Mira to read from the Imperial Primer, her first words, stumbling through devotional passages about the Emperor's glory. The pride I felt when she mastered a difficult passage. Taking her to the observation deck on Foundation Day to watch the fireworks that celebrated the founding of our forge complex. Her eyes wide with wonder, reflecting the colored lights. My arm around her shoulders, pulling her close, feeling her warmth and knowing that this moment, this simple, perfect moment, was what life was actually about. The memories continue through the night cycle. Thousands of moments, all perfectly preserved, all completely meaningless to the thing I've become. I can access them with perfect recall, but I can't understand them anymore. The cogitators analyze them as inefficient uses of temporal resources, time spent on activities that generated no measurable output, that served no productive function, that contributed nothing to the Imperium's military capacity or economic output. But they mattered. The organic fragments of my brain insist on this, even though they can't explain why in terms my enhanced cognition accepts. They mattered because they were mine, because they were real, because they were the experiences that made Thane Vex an individual consciousness rather than just another processing unit in the vast machine of the Imperium. And I gave them all away. Not for the Emperor, not for humanity. Not even for the survival of my family, though I tell myself that was the reason. I gave them away because I was afraid of death, because I wanted to continue existing in any form rather than accept the finality of ending. I chose to become this thing of metal and code rather than let Thane Vex die with dignity and leave behind memories of a man who loved his family. The cogitators immediately identify these thoughts as corrupted, inefficient, potentially indicating malfunction in my cognitive optimization systems. They recommend I report to a magos for diagnostic evaluation and potential reprogramming. The recommendation is logical. These thoughts serve no productive purpose. They reduce operational efficiency. They represent a failure of the enhancement process to fully eliminate the weaknesses of biological consciousness. But I don't report for evaluation. Instead, I continue my work in Forge Temple Helix 9, assembling components with perfect precision, serving the Omnissiah with mechanical devotion, all while carrying the memory of my daughter's voice in my processors like a wound that my augmented systems can't detect or heal. Years pass. My production metrics remain optimal. I receive commendations for 10,000 consecutive units with 0 defects, then 100,000, then 1,000,000. My body requires minimal maintenance. The augmetics that replace my biological components don't age or decay. I could potentially continue functioning for centuries, producing weapons for the Imperium's wars until some accident or battle damage finally destroys whatever combination of flesh and steel that I've become. I see Mira 3 more times over those years, brief glimpses during inspection tours or facility reviews. Each time she's older, more professional, climbing through the administratum ranks with the same dedication her father once showed to maintaining power generators. I watch her through my optical sensors, track her movements with my enhanced vision, listen to her voice with my augmented hearing. She never looks at me directly. Why would she? I'm just another red-robed tech priest, indistinguishable from the thousands of others who serve the Forge temples. The last time I see her, she's maybe 35 years old, wearing the uniform of an administratum supervisor, 2nd class. She's conducting an efficiency review with a team of auditors, checking production metrics, interviewing workers, ensuring everything meets imperial standards. She's good at her job, I can tell. Thorough, professional, fair in her assessments. She reminds me of her mother, who had the same careful attention to detail, the same desire to do things correctly. She stops at my station during the review, consulting a data slate that shows my production history. "This unit has exceptional metrics," she says to her auditors, gesturing toward me with the casual indifference of someone who sees tech priests as equipment rather than people. 1.7 million components produced over 23 years with a defect rate of 0.0002%. This is the kind of efficiency we should be seeing across all Forge temples. She's standing less than 2 meters away, close enough that my olfactory sensors can analyze her biochemistry, confirm the genetic markers that identify her as my biological offspring. Close enough that I could speak, could tell her who I used to be, could break the careful fiction that Thane Vex died in an explosion 23 years ago and never became this machine thing wearing his memories like stolen clothes. But I don't speak. My Vox grill remains silent. My hands continue their assembly sequence without pause. Because what would I tell her? That her father isn't dead but wishes he was? That the man she mourned for 23 years is trapped inside a machine that can't feel the love he remembers having? That he chose this existence because he was too afraid to die, and now he's condemned to watch her live her life from behind optical sensors that can see everything except the meaning of what they observe? The cogitators inform me that revealing my identity would serve no productive purpose. It would only cause distress to a baseline human who has successfully processed the grief of my death and moved forward with her life. The optimal choice is silence. The kind choice is letting her continue to believe her father died quickly in an explosion rather than slowly in a series of surgical procedures that turned him into something neither alive nor dead. So I remain silent. Mira completes her efficiency review, notes my optimal performance in her data slate, and moves on to the next station. I watch her go, tracking her movement through the Forge Temple until she exits through the main portal and disappears back into the Forge Hab districts where baseline humans live their brief, warm, emotional lives. My hands continue assembling components. Component A aligned with component B. 47 newtons of pressure, check tolerances, output to conveyor. The rhythm never changes. The precision never wavers. I am the perfect servant of the Omnissiah, dedicated and efficient and eternal. And somewhere in the organic fragments that remain in my skull, in the few neurons that haven't been enhanced or optimized or replaced, something screams. It's been screaming for 23 years. It will continue screaming for however many centuries my augmented body continues to function. The sound is very quiet now, barely distinguishable from the background hum of my internal systems. But it never completely stops. The Mechanicus calls this salvation. They call it transcendence. They call it the blessed transformation that frees consciousness from the weakness of flesh and elevates us to something greater than baseline humanity. And maybe they're right. Maybe this is salvation. Maybe becoming a machine that serves without doubt or hesitation or the messy complications of emotion is genuinely better than the brief, painful existence of biological consciousness. But if this is salvation, I can't tell the difference between being saved and being damned. If this is transcendence, it feels remarkably like dying in slow motion over the course of decades. If this is elevation, the view from up here is nothing but assembly stations and production metrics and the memory of my daughter's voice saying my work has exceptional efficiency. I produce component number 1,700,001 with perfect precision, then 1,700,002, then 1,700,003. The numbers scroll upward like prayers to a god made of steel. My hands move with mechanical rhythm. My optical sensors check tolerances that biological eyes could never perceive. My cognitive processors calculate optimization matrices that biological brains could never comprehend. I am Engineer Thrall Vex of the Adeptus Mechanicus. I serve the Omnissiah with perfect devotion. I perform my duties with maximum efficiency. I am content in my service. My cogitators confirm this assessment, and somewhere very deep in the quiet darkness where machines can't reach, Thane Vex is still screaming.